I'd like to welcome all of you, yourself as well as the witnesses, Minister Alghabra and his team, to meeting number 17 of the House of Commons Standing Committee on Transport, Infrastructure and Communities. Today's meeting is taking place in a hybrid format pursuant to the House Order of January 25th, 2021. Proceedings will be made available via the House of Commons website. So you are aware, the webcast will always show the person speaking rather than the entirety of the committee. To ensure an orderly meeting, I'd like to outline a few rules to follow. First off, members and witnesses may speak in the official language of their choice. Interpretation services are available for this meeting. You have the choice at the bottom of your screen of either Floor, English, or French. For members participating in person, proceed as you usually would when the whole committee is meeting in person in the committee room. Keep in mind the directives from the Board of Internal Economy regarding masking and health protocols. Before speaking, please wait until I recognize you by name. If you are on the video conference, please click on the microphone icon to unmute yourself. Those in the room, your microphones will be controlled as normal by the Proceedings and Verification Officer. A reminder that all comments by members and witnesses should be addressed through the chair. When you are not speaking, your mic should be on mute. With regard to a speaking list, the committee clerk and myself will do the very best we can to maintain the order of speaking for all members, whether they are participating virtually or in person. Members, pursuant to Standing Order 1082 and the motion adopted by the committee on Tuesday, January 26th, 2021, the committee is meeting today to continue its study on the impact of COVID-19 on the aviation sector. It's my pleasure to welcome our witnesses. We have, first of all, the Honorable Omar Alghabra, Member of Parliament and Minister of Transport. Along with Minister Alghabra, we have department officials from the Department of Transport, Mr. Michael Keenan, Deputy Minister, Mr. Kevin Brousseau, Assistant Deputy Minister, Safety and Security, Mr. Lawrence Hansen, Assistant Deputy Minister, Policy, and correct me on this on the pronunciation on this if I'm wrong, but Anna Nyandia Marasetti, Assistant Deputy Minister, Programs. So with that, I'm going to hand the floor over to Minister Alghabra. Minister Alghabra, you have 5 minutes for your opening comments.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, committee members, for inviting me to contribute to the committee's study of the impact of COVID-19 on Canada's transport sector. I deeply respect the work of this committee. I spent many hours in physical and virtual committee rooms like this, and I know the importance of the work that is being done in a room like these. It is an honor to appear before you today for the first time as Minister of Transport, and I look forward to working with you to improve Canada's transportation system. Since the earliest days of the COVID-19 pandemic, Transport Canada has worked with the transportation sector to introduce a layered system of measures and guidance to protect Canadians and those working in the transportation and shipping sectors. Recently, in an effort to further curb the spread of the virus and new variants of it into Canada, we added new rules on international travel. Under these new rules, all international passenger flights must now land at one of Canada's 4 largest airports. Air travelers must provide proof of a negative COVID-19 molecular test before boarding an international flight to Canada. Upon arrival, they must take another COVID-19 molecular test and reserve a room in a Government of Canada approved hotel for 3 nights at their own expense while awaiting the test results. In addition, the government and Canada's airlines have agreed to suspend all flights to and from Mexico and Caribbean countries until April 30th of this year. These measures have been informed by the latest science and data, as well as the guidance of public health agencies. The Government of Canada knows that the pandemic is also disproportionately affecting remote and northern communities that depend on small air carriers for essential services. That is why we have announced a funding of up to $191.3 million for provinces and territories to ensure that remote fly-in communities continue to receive essential supplies. To help mitigate the decline in business at Canadian airports, we've also provided rent relief for the 21 airport authorities that have ground leases with most recently, through the fall economic statement, an additional $1.1 billion in financial support for the air sector was announced. This will be provided through a series of targeted measures designed to support regional connectivity, critical infrastructure investments, and the continued operation of Canada's airports. As we look to the future, we know that a strong and competitive air transport industry is vital for Canada's economic recovery. Allow me to address what I know is on the minds of many Canadians, particularly those working in the aviation sector. The sector has one of the world's best trained and committed employees. I know many are anxious and frustrated about the fact that negotiations on financial help for the sector have not yet concluded. To those Canadians who have written to me, know that I'm acutely aware of the toll this crisis has taken on your lives. COVID restrictions have dramatically and negatively impacted the sector. Nobody wants a return to pre-COVID normalcy for the sector more than myself. That being said, I'm also aware of that any financial assistance package needs to address the concerns of Canadians. More broadly, we have to consider the matter of refunds for air travelers who purchased tickets but were unable to use them due to COVID, or the issue of communities who have lost regional flight connecting them to the rest of the country. We therefore have a responsibility to take the time necessary to reach an agreement with the airlines that will be broadly supported by Canadians. That is dependent on all parties at the table. It is also in everyone's interest that we do so. Among the other tasks outlined in my mandate letter, I've been asked to promote Canada's green and innovative aerospace sector, sustain regional air infrastructure, support regional economic development, and enable growth in other key sectors such as tourism. In addition, I will work with my colleagues to make sure that we put in place recommendations in response to the PS 752 tragedy. I have personally met with the families on many occasions and remain committed to supporting them and doing everything we can that a similar tragedy never happens again. Finally, the Prime Minister has made it clear that I must continue to make progress on the commitments laid out in Minister Garneau's 2019 mandate letter. I look forward to building on the excellent work of Minister Garneau. Colleagues, this is just a quick summary of the work that is ahead of us. Thank you once again for giving me the time to appear before you. And before I hand it back over to you, Mr. Chair, I want to take a moment to express my gratitude to officials within the Department of Transport, to staff within the Minister's office who have been working tirelessly, supporting me over the last 4 weeks since my appointment on making sure that I'm up to speed and I'm ready for the work ahead. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Minister Alghabra. We are now going to start off with the speaking order for the first round. We have Ms. Kusi for the Conservatives. We have, following her, we have Mr. Alkuri for the Liberals. Following Mr. Alkuri, we have Mr. Barceau-Duval from the Bloc. And following Mr. Barceau-Duval, we have Mr. Bachrach from the NDP. Ms. Kusi, you have the floor for 6 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. And again, welcome, Minister, and congratulations on your appointment. Very significant. Okay, it was reported in the press on Monday in the Globe and Mail that a plan is coming. Canadians, workers, the aviation sector was devastated when this news came out of Reuters in December. And again, we're disappointed. Is this true? Is there a plan coming imminently, Minister?
Minister.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and I want to thank my colleague, Ms. Kusi, for her kind remarks. I've had a chance to speak with her right after my appointment, as well as I did with other critics from other parties. It's very important for me to remain in touch with opposition members to certainly use their insight into my decision-making process. Let me comment on her question. The airline sector is incredibly important for Canada's economy and Canada's security. We recognize that the pandemic has disproportionately and massively impacted.
Thank you, Minister. We don't have a lot of time. Is there a plan coming imminently? Yes or no? Can we expect a plan imminently? Can the airline sector expect a plan imminently that they have been asking for a year? Yes or no, please, Minister?
So, Mr. Chair, look, I said in my opening remarks that I want to see the deal happen as quickly as possible, but there are also other parties at the table. So we are negotiating in quick order and discussions with the airline sector. So I hope that it happens in short orders, but there are other players here at the table, and we hope we can reach an agreement soon.
Thank you, Minister. So can you give us a date for when we can expect this plan, please?
Mr. Chair, as I said, there are other factors here, including the other parties that are at the table. So I'm not able to give a specific date. I'm not able to prejudge the outcome yet. All I could say is that myself and our government are committed to having this deal as quickly as possible.
And thank you for your work on that. Now, you discussed the plan a little bit in your opening statement, but I'm just going to go back to parts of it. Can you commit that it will restore regional routes and lost service to communities who have been disconnected from coast to coast to coast, as was mentioned by your own colleague, the MP for St. John Rothsay, today in statements? Can you confirm that this plan will incur the restoration of regional routes, please, Minister?
If I can, Minister Alghabra, sorry, Ms. Kusi, if you can, the interpreters are asking me if you can just bring your mic up just a tad, maybe a centimeter. That's perfect. Good. Okay, thank you, Minister. And thank you, Ms. Kusi. Minister, the floor is yours.
My apologies to the interpreters. Look, as I stated in my opening remarks, restoring regional routes is part of the consideration of this negotiation. I'm not, at this moment, I'm not able to prejudge exactly the specifics, but I can tell you that it's a massive consideration of the deal. It is important part of the deal, and it's necessary for public support.
Thank you, Minister. Will the plan protect workers? Will we ensure that there are no further job losses as a result of this money potentially being distributed to airlines? Can you ensure that this plan will protect workers?
Mr. Chair, the heart of our negotiations with major airlines is protecting jobs and is restoring regional routes, is making sure that the airline sector is resilient. And one way of making sure that the airline sector is resilient is that we maintain those highly trained and highly skilled jobs.
Excellent. You addressed this in your opening remarks, Minister, but again, I would like you to confirm for the Canadian public, all of those Canadians who are thousands of dollars out of pocket, will the plan ensure that passengers receive refunds for canceled flights, please?
Mr. Chair, as I again mentioned in my opening remarks, refunds for passengers who lost trips because of COVID restrictions are a critical element of our discussions. So it's regional routes, it's jobs, it's refunds. So all of those aspects are taken into account in the ongoing discussions with the airline.
Excellent. Thank you for recognizing that, Minister. Minister, can you also ensure that airlines are not allowed to claw back travel agents' commissions as a result of this plan?
Minister.
Mr. Chair, I can also add that the aspect of independent travel agent refunds or commissions are part of the discussions as we speak.
Excellent. Finally, can you please ensure, can you commit that NAV Canada will maintain adequate service levels for air traffic controls as a result of this plan?
Mr. Chair, I think my friends and my colleagues know that NAV Canada is an independent private organization that operates at arm's length. Having said that, let me just say that I am watching it very carefully, watching the decisions that NAV is going to make very carefully. There are ongoing studies right now on the level of service, and Transport Canada will review any decision that may have an impact on safety.
Thank you, Minister. Now, Minister, since you are new, I'm certain you're aware that since March 12th, your government has been saying that they were looking into mitigating the impacts of COVID-19 on the aviation sector with some type of support. Yet discussions didn't start until November 8th, 2020. So can I ask you, Minister, what took your government so long to act in favor of this sector in an attempt to help this airline sector and to help connect Canadians with a strong and viable airline sector? Why did it take so long, Minister, to come to this point where you are ready to release this plan and all of these commitments that you have made today?
Minister.
Mr. Chair, let me just say that since the beginning of the pandemic, our government acted very quickly and decisively with broad-based support programs that focused on Canadians and Canadian workers and businesses. So we've introduced measures like CERB, we've introduced measures like the wage subsidy that supported everyone in Canada. And by the way, the airline sector alone benefited up to $1.8 billion from wage subsidy. There are additional measures that I also mentioned in my opening remarks that the airline sector has been receiving. Having said that, I acknowledge that the second wave and the introductions of new variants to COVID and the implementation of new travel measures that added further burden on the airline sector have introduced a new sense of urgency and a specific need for measures for the airline sector. That's why late last fall, last November, we started discussions with the airline on particular sector support for them.
Thank you, Ms. Kusi. Thank you, Minister Alghabra.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Minister.
Well done for both of you. We're now going to move on to Mr. Al-Khoury. Mr. Al-Khoury, you have the floor for 6 minutes.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you very much, Chair. Welcome to Minister Alghabra. It's a pleasure to see you here with us. Mr. Minister, if the government had why do the government prefer to see a fusion of the companies? What would have been preferable? This is my first question.
But perhaps if my colleague can repeat the question. I don't want to guess what the question. I have a sense what the question is, but I'd rather, if you don't mind, you repeat the question.
So, thank you, Minister. Mr. Al-Khoury.
I'm going to this problem with the translation. Minister, in a scenario where our government did not approve the merger, what were your main concerns? Why is a merger preferable, for instance, to a possible bankruptcy?
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I'm assuming my colleague, first of all, thank you to my colleague for his kind remarks. I'm assuming he's talking about the acquisition of Air Transat. Recently, our government made a decision to allow for the acquisition by Air Canada to Air Transat. And this was a complicated where we had to examine all factors on the table. I can certainly say that the current situation within the airline sector due to COVID played a big part in our decision. There was we wanted to protect jobs. Jobs were at risk. Consumer choices were at risk. The headquarters of Air Transat in Quebec was at risk. So the maintenance of the fleet of Air Transat in Quebec was at risk. So we wanted to make sure that we protected all of that. There is a lot of public interest here at stake, and we have introduced many strict conditions on this merger to make sure that we protect Canadians' interests.
Monsieur le Ministre, je ne sais pas si la
Minister, I don't know if the is the translation working now?
Monsieur le Ministre.
Minister, one of the priorities for this government in the area of air policy up until the pandemic was to encourage greater competition. For example, by regulatory changes that would help increase the number of companies. Given that, you approved the merger, a merger that could reduce competitivity and competition. How did COVID affect your decision to allow this merger?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And my colleague is right. We have always been committed and we remain committed to a competitive marketplace in the aviation sector. I think it goes without saying that COVID-19 and the travel restrictions that are caused by COVID-19 have collapsed the demand for air travel. And that collapse has made the short-term issues of competition was less relevant. And what was more interested, what we were more focused on is protecting jobs, protecting long-term sustainability of the sector. And those are the factors that we examined when we made a decision.
Mr. Al-Khairi.
Monsieur le Ministre, Monsieur Pelado.
Minister, Mr. Pelado says that he's made a better offer for buying Air Transat, and that would have maintained its independence with regard to Air Canada. Yet Air Transat said itself that, unlike media reports, the proposal was $5 a share, not $6. And the proposal did not provide for restrictive funding with regard to sufficient liquidity for the purchase, and the proposal did not provide for the necessary financing to meet needs with regard to operating capital for Air Transat of approximately $500 million. As the regulatory authority, how did Transport Canada did Transport Canada take into account these aspects if it approved the merger?
Let me just be clear. The law is very clear about what the Government of Canada needs to review. The Government of Canada can only review the transaction that is proposed before it. Having said that, when we weighed the options or our decision, we looked at all the information that is before us, including the information provided by Mr. Pelado. I hope my colleague understands that I'm not able to get into financial specifics because of business confidentiality. But having said that, I can assure him and all Canadians that we've considered all information before us. And we ended up making what we felt was the best decision that protects Canadians, protects the public interest of Canadians, protects jobs, and protects the long-term sustainability of the industry.
Thank you, Mr. Alghabra, and thank you, Mr. Al-Khairi. Well done. We're now going to move on to our third testimony with respect to the Bloc Québécois. Mr. Barceau-Duval, you have the floor for 6 minutes.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you very much, Chair. Mr. Alghabra, for a year now, there have been tens of thousands of workers in the air transport sector who have been unemployed, and many people who have not been reimbursed for tickets. And why have you not forced the companies to reimburse the Canadians for their tickets? I think that's unacceptable. You haven't done anything, and you are the boss, and why can you not impose your own conditions to save jobs and reimburse travelers?
And I also want to thank my colleague for his kind remarks when I spoke with him early on in my appointment. And I want to thank him for giving me the opportunity to say that I fully understand the burden, the financial burden that those canceled tickets or where Canadians either got their flight canceled or they were unable to travel because of COVID. And we are very much have been focused on making sure that those Canadians are
Merci, Monsieur le
access
ministre.
their refund.
Thank you very much, Minister. But my question was, are you going to impose any measures to ensure that jobs are protected and that people are reimbursed?
Mr. Chair, as I stated in my previous interactions, let me assure you, throughout the discussions that we're having right now with the airline sector, protecting jobs, refunds, regional connectivity are integral parts
Merci.
of the
Je
discussion.
comprends que vous ne voulez pas répondre à la question, mais
I understand that you don't want to answer the question, but you do have the power. And my next question is that you authorized the sale of air transit to Air Canada against the opinion of the Competition Bureau. As the competition commissioner decided that it was not advisable, and this would not be a way of resolving the competitivity and the competition situation between Air Canada and Air Transat. Why did you go ahead with the merger?
Mr. Chair, when making a decision, my responsibility is to make a decision based on the overall public interest. I certainly took into account the issues of competition, and that's why there are conditions in the approval on price monitoring. There are conditions to make sure that that any changes to pricing and any adjustments that are unjustified will be flagged, and we are going to work with the sector on making sure that we increase competition in post-COVID. Right now, we are focused on doing what's best for Canadians and for Canadian jobs.
je comprends, mais je pense que
I understand, but I think that it is in the public interest to increase and promote competition. And you authorized the sale to Air Canada, but shortly after, we can see that Air Canada is saying that they might not really be interested anymore. And so that would be putting into jeopardy even more jobs in Quebec. And yet you haven't paid any attention to the offer from Mr. Pellado.
Minister.
First of all, Mr. Chair, we did pay attention to the correspondence that I received from Mr. Pellado, and we examined all of his arguments. And let me just say is that to my colleague is that if Air Transat ended up, because of lack of demand, ceased to exist or went bankrupt, how would that help Canadians? How would that help the interest of choices in the marketplace? How would that help jobs? So we needed to make sure that we made a decision that is best for jobs, best for the marketplace today, and best for Canadians and Quebecers.
ce que je comprends, c'est que
But what I understand, Minister, is that if the other offer had been accepted, Air Transit might have gone into bankruptcy. But and do you think that Mr. Pellado was offering money just because he wanted to throw his money away? And by selling to Air Canada, you're saying that it's because of COVID-19, and COVID-19 will not be eternal, and we have to have competitivity later. And when there's someone who's a billionaire who says that he's ready to buy the company, are you really saying that that person isn't able to make an offer and know what he's doing and have the funds necessary?
Throughout the consultation and the discussions that I've had, I found there's almost unanimity in the marketplace in support of this merger. So I asked my colleague, why is the Quebec government has not opposed this merger? I asked my colleague, why are unions supporting this merger? So, I hear him. I understand what he's saying, but we did what we think is best for Quebecers and what's best for Canadians.
Et là, présentement, ce qu'on se retrouve,
what we find now is that Air Canada said that it's really not that interested in transit. But you talk about saving the jobs in the air sector, and you could have continued and protected competitivity, but you didn't. And you talk about defending the public, but your decisions have been purely political.
I understand that the honourable member has a job to do. I respectfully disagree with his analysis. In fact, almost everybody disagrees with his analysis. I don't want to repeat why we think it's the best thing for Quebecers and Canadians that we ended up reaching this decision. But I asked the honourable member to speak with unions, to speak with the government of Quebec, and perhaps if he doesn't take my word for it, maybe he'll take the words of others.
Thank you, Minister Algabra, and thank you, Mr. Barso-Duval. Well done. We're now going to move on to our last speaker of this round, Mr. Bacharach. The floor is yours for 6 minutes.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair, and Minister, welcome to our committee. It's good to see you, and again, congratulations on your new role. I wanted to start my questions on the topic of NAV Canada. This is something I know there are a lot of concerns about across the country, and I wonder if you could lay out for me what actions your government plans to take to halt the layoffs of skilled professionals at NAV Canada and ensure that the company is able to return to its high level of service and exemplary safety record as soon as the pandemic is over.
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I also want to thank Minister Bacharach for his kind words. And I look forward to working with him as well as other colleagues. He is aware that NAV Canada is an independent private organization that makes its own operational decisions separately independently from government, by the way, which was designed by the House of Commons to do that way because it was seen to be the best and to serve Canadians better that way. Having said that, I have heard his and even my colleagues in the Liberal Party as well about concerns of potential job losses. And I'm aware that now Canada is currently conducting studies about level of services and the type of services they offer. I will await and see the outcome of those studies. And I can assure you that Transport Canada will not compromise the safety of Canadians.
Mr. Bacharach.
Minister, the studies that you referenced have created a huge amount of uncertainty for the employees, for the companies who depend on those services, for the communities in which those towers are located. Now, you as minister have the power to override the outcomes of those studies after the studies are completed. Do you not agree that it would be better if the minister had the ability to remove certain towers from consideration before that uncertainty is created? Now, my colleague Brian Massey has a bill, a private member's bill, that would give you precisely those powers. And I wonder if that is something that you would support.
Minister.
Mr. Chair, I have not seen that bill, and I look forward to taking a look at that bill. But I could tell you that my colleague knows that I cannot override NAV's decision unless they end up having a negative impact on safety. Having said that, I can assure him, and I am actually very well aware of the anxiety and that the risks of job losses is causing. Last Friday, I had a meeting with my provincial counterparts, and you can check the eventual press release that was issued from that meeting. We discussed the anxiety that NAV Canada's job losses may cause in communities, and that we will collectively monitor the impact of those potential changes on safety of Canadians.
Mr. Bacharach.
Thank you, Minister. Now, the unions representing NAV Canada workers, including IBEW and PIPSC, they met with the committee back in January, and they indicated that they had reached out to your office for a meeting. I'm wondering if you could tell us if you've had a chance to meet with those unions.
Minister.
Mr. Chair, I've had several meetings with many stakeholders and different union members. I don't think I've had a chance to meet with the Air Traffic Controller Union yet. And if I'm wrong, I will be corrected. Having said that, I'm sure if I haven't met with them, I will be speaking with them in short order. However, I'm well aware of the anxiety, as I said, and the uncertainty that is happening right now for their jobs. And I continue to monitor the studies and the outcome of that study.
Mr. Bachrach?
Minister, you've mentioned several times the arm's length nature of NAV Canada, which was privatized 25 years ago. Now, given what we're seeing in the pandemic, given the centrality of this organization's services to flying safety, to the support of the economy, to all of these things, is there not a strong argument for bringing NavCan services back into the federal government so that there can be greater stability, so that these job losses of skilled professionals can be avoided, so that there can be some assurance given to the air sector that these critical services are going to continue and that there's going to be a high level of safety and that the air sector will be supported moving forward?
Minister?
Mr. Chair, I understand the instinctive reaction to say let's renationalize NAV Canada. Let me just say that putting NAV Canada at an arm's length from government has served Canadians well, has served the industry well, has depoliticized decision making within NAV Canada. I understand what the honourable member is asking for. There are jobs here at stake, and I understand why there are a lot of people concerned about those jobs. But we also have to be careful that we examine these situations within their context and make sure that we make the right decisions that serve Canadians well.
Thank you, Minister. Do you have time for a quick question together?
Okay, a quick one. Gee, well, looking here. Maybe, Mike, I'll ask a question on refunds. That's the next topic I wanted to go to, Minister. And we're in this odd situation right now where the government is saying there's going to be no assistance for the air sector without refunds to passengers. The air sector, the airlines, are saying there's going to be no refunds unless there is a financial assistance package. How did we get to the point where passenger refunds have become a bargaining chip? And we're a year into the pandemic and the airlines are still sitting on billions of dollars that rightly belongs to these Canadian passengers. Could the minister tell us how we got here?
So, Chair, I think it's a simple answer. It's called COVID-19. When COVID-19 arrived, it didn't come with an instruction manual. It caused all kinds of havoc in many industries. Certainly, the airline sector has been disproportionately affected by COVID-19 and the travel restrictions that are being imposed, not just by Canada, by the rest of the world. So passengers have been impacted, workers have been impacted, companies have been impacted, and I recognize all of that, and we're doing our best to support Canadians and to support Canadian jobs.
Thank you, Minister. Thank you, Mr. Bachrach. First round is complete. Great job, everybody. We're now going to go into the second round. The first two speakers, we have Mr. Cram, the Conservatives, Mr. Sidhu, the Liberals, both with 5 minutes each, followed by Mr. Barcelona and Mr. Bachrach with 2.5 minutes each. Mr. Cram, the floor is yours for 6 minutes.
All right. Well,
sorry, Mr. Cram, for 5 minutes.
Okay. Well, good afternoon, Minister Alghabra, and welcome to the committee. We've heard many witnesses at this committee say that resuming air travel after the pandemic will not be like turning on a light switch. Skilled workers will have left the industry or left the country and will not be coming back. And this is particularly true for air traffic controllers at NAV Canada. As you are aware, NAV Canada is planning to close 7 air traffic control towers across the country, including the one in Regina. So why don't you instruct NAV Canada to stop its study to close air traffic control towers until air travel has returned to normal levels after the pandemic is over?
Minister.
Mr. Chair, if I issued instructions to NAV Canada on its operation, I know this committee would be very interested to invite me back to ask me why I'm breaking the legislative powers that I have. Let me say that I am not able to prejudge the outcome of the studies that NAV Canada is doing right now. Having said that, I have heard loudly the anxiety and the concerns of job losses. I am monitoring the situation. I await the study that NAV Canada is conducting, and I can tell him and all Canadians that any changes that will have an impact on safety will be reviewed by Transport Canada.
Mr. Cram.
Thank you. Minister Alghabra, the Aeronautics Act gives the Transport Minister broad oversight for the responsibility to oversee the safe and efficient operations of Canada's airspace. It's very important to understand that when a city loses its air traffic control tower, it makes it that much more difficult to attract new flights to the city, which makes it more difficult to attract conferences and conventions and sporting events and all the rest of it. So, Mr. Minister, there's nothing stopping you from picking up the phone and calling NAV Canada and telling them that these tower closures are a bad idea. So why don't you do that?
Minister.
Mr. Chair, I know that NAV Canada appeared before this committee and members had a chance to ask them questions, which is great. I think the committee is doing its job representing Canadians. But again, I'll tell the honourable member, if I cannot do something that the law does not allow me to do. But he's right when he said I have powers over the protection of safety of Canadians. And that's what I have been repeating, that any decision that NAV Canada makes that will have an impact on safety will be reviewed by Transport Canada.
Mr. Graham.
Mr. Alghabra, over the past few weeks, this committee has heard from witnesses from the Canadian Air Traffic Controllers Association, the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, and the Professional Institute of the Public Service of Canada. All three of these unions are requesting a $750 million subsidy to NAV Canada, contingent on there being no layoffs. That seems like a pretty good idea to me. Why doesn't the government do that?
Minister.
Let me just say, Mr. Chair, that I'm somewhat confused at the Conservatives' position. There seems to be some inconsistency here. On the one hand, they're saying we're spending too much money on supporting Canadians. On the other hand, they're asking us to spend more. Let me address the point that he's saying. Right now, NAV Canada is an arm's length organization that makes its operational decisions independently. If there are any changes that will risk Canadians' safety, Transport Canada will review that decision.
Mr. Graham.
Okay, so according to the government's supplementary estimates, Via Rail has received just over $1 billion to subsidize the operating costs of passenger train service since the start of the pandemic. So I wonder if the minister could explain what makes passenger train service so important that it warrants a $1 billion bailout, but NAV Canada and the air travel sector so unimportant that they do not deserve any sector-specific support for their operations costs.
Minister.
I think the honourable member is trying to mix apples and oranges. Via Trail provides an essential service to passengers, particularly in towns and cities that need that as an essential service. NAV Canada has not decided to, and if they do, have an impact on the safety of air traffic, that's another discussion. Right now, Via Rail needed to maintain its essential service for Canadians. And again, I would say, if Via was unable to deliver its service, again, this committee would be calling on me to provide that support, that essential service. So we're talking about an essential service here. And NAV Canada, we yet to see what their decisions will be and what their final level of service will be.
Thank you, Mr. Alghabra, and thank you, Mr. Cram. We're now going to move on to our next speaker, Mr. Sidhu. You have the floor for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, Minister. Congratulations on your new role for being with us here today. As part of your supplemental mandate letter, you're tasked with working with ministerial colleagues to make zero-emission vehicles more affordable. We know Transport Canada has been leading the incentive for zero emissions vehicle program. Now, has the program been successful in making these vehicles more affordable for Canadians?
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to my colleague for his kind remarks and for his question. Look, the climate change is an integral part of our commitment, mandate, and promise to Canadians, and that we support the integration of zero emission vehicles into the marketplace is an essential part. You may know that 30% of emissions in Canada come from the transportation sector. So we want to find a way to facilitate the acceleration of adoption of zero emission vehicles. And the program is called the Incentives for Adoption has been extremely successful. In fact, we saw a significant increase between 2019 and 2020 for the adoption of zero emission vehicles. So yes, it's been successful, and we look forward to building on that success.
Mr. Sadhu.
Thank you, Minister. Thank you, Mr. Chair. For Canadians who purchase used vehicles, is the government considering any measures to make used zero-emission vehicles more affordable? I know this is important to so many in my constituency.
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And yes, we are exploring the option of expanding the incentive to used vehicles. I know the argument says it doesn't necessarily mean that there's new zero emission vehicles on the marketplace, but we think it will actually, in fact, help, because it will help individuals who may otherwise not be able to afford a brand new zero emission vehicle buy a used one, and then the people who sold it might be able to move on and buy even a newer zero emission vehicle. So we are exploring the option, and we'll get back to you when we finalize our assessment.
Mr. Sadhu.
Thank you, Minister. And Minister, trade is so important to so many industries in my riding. You know, the transportation sector is huge in Brampton here. We've got many truckers, rail, cargo coming in through various modes. Can you provide an update on efforts to enhance our trade corridors to increase global market access for Canadian goods?
Minister.
Absolutely, Mr. Chair. Trade diversification and trade expansion has been a big part of our government's commitment to Canadians. I served before as a parliamentary secretary to the Minister of International Trade, and I know that as a trading nation, where 1 out of 6 jobs depend on trade, making sure that we have the right infrastructure in Canada to facilitate the growth of trade is important. And that's why I am proud to have within Transport Canada the Fund for National Trade Corridor. The first iteration of that fund that was launched in 2017 has been extremely successful, and we're looking forward to examine further opportunities to expand and build on that success.
Mr. Sadhu.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Do I have time for one more question?
You do.
Okay. Minister, I know your department is looking at testing essential workers at the border. I know talks may be ongoing, but can you please provide some background on this, as I'm getting a couple calls from constituents on this matter?
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And look, whatever travel measures we impose are guided by data, are guided by our public health advice that we receive. Myself, the Minister of Public Safety, the Minister of Health are examining at creating a system that tests essential workers, but we are for sure keeping an eye on me and not to interrupt their ability to do their job, because critical supplies depend on it. But at the same time, we want to find a way to do it where they protect the workers, protect their families, and protect Canadians. That's why we are currently in consultation with stakeholders, with industry, union members, and industry associations on how best to design that program.
Thank you, Minister, and thank you, Mr. Sadhu. We're now going to move on to our next round. Mr. Barceau-Duval, you have the floor for 2.5 minutes.
Merci, Monsieur.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Earlier on, Minister, you intimated that I was the only person to defend Air Transat. Well, look at WestJet is against the sale. Air Passengers RAG also has expressed concern. The Competition Bureau, the European Commission, I'm not so alone after all, am I? Now, if you had read a brief on public interest from the ministry, from the department, you would also have received other negative comments on this transaction. So my question is the following. Air Canada has been exercising price dumping in the regions in order to eliminate competition before raising their prices again. Then Air Canada, with COVID, gave up on many of its regional flights, which of course has been very deleterious for the regions and its industry. We should have tried, we need to find a solution and to stand united. So we have regional transporters and we have small towns and villages who are now turning their backs on Air Canada because they now want to bank on small regional airlines. Why do you think that? Do you want to be part of the solution or the problem?
For sure. And I can assure my colleague that all of those factors have been taken into account. We are in a pandemic. Air traffic has been devastated. The marketplace for airlines have been devastated. Jobs have been lost. We need to do what we can to ensure that we maintain a resilient sector, that we are ready to help the sector be on guard for
Merci.
recovery.
Dernière question pour vous.
Thank you very much. One last question before finishing. After the Transportation Department refused, NAVCAN increased its prices by 30%. The air traffic controllers were laid off before the assessment was even complete. Can you guarantee that no towers will be shut down and NAV Canada will be told to keep them open?
Mr. Chair, as I stated repeatedly to my other colleagues, any decision that NAV Canada makes that will compromise or have an impact on safety will be reviewed by Transport Canada, and that is my commitment to my colleagues and to all Canadians.
Thank you, Mr. Algabra. And as well to Mr. Barceau-Deval. We're now going to move on to Mr. Bachrach for 2.5 minutes. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I should start by just clarifying a statement from my last round. It was Air Canada that said there would be no refunds unless there was a financial assistance package. I believe I attributed it to the airline sector in general. And as we all know, WestJet has found a way to refund its passengers. But on the topic of refunds, I'm curious, Minister, from the very beginning, we've been pushing for your department to mandate passenger refunds, to mandate the airlines to provide those refunds to passengers who are out thousands of dollars. My question is, did the government pursue mandating those refunds? And did you receive specific legal advice that indicated that the government was not able to force the airlines to refund passengers?
Minister.
So, Mr. Chair, you know that in, I think it was 2019, we implemented the Air Passenger Act, where we have outlined clearly the rights of passengers, and we set up a system in place where the Canadian Transportation Agency is able to adjudicate and look after complaints that the passengers may have. So we've set up a system in place where passengers can file a complaint and where airlines can be held accountable for violating the terms of and the rules that there should be that they should upheld.
But Minister, that process is a dumpster fire. There are 16,000. There's a backlog of 16,000 complaints. It's totally deadlocked, and no one is getting help from that process. The EU, the US, the UK, all of those jurisdictions found a way to get refunds for air passengers. How come they're so much better able to protect their air passengers' rights than Canada is?
Mr. Chair, I take exceptions, I guess, no surprise to my colleague's question. We have set up a system that is world class. You're right, he's right. The number of complaints have skyrocketed because of COVID, and I know that the agency is doing its utmost best to go through them and be as efficient as possible. But having said that, we've set up a system that protects Canadians and ensures that their rights, the passengers' rights, are protected. And I know that
Minister,
in December,
with a backlog of 16,000 complaints, are you really calling that a world-class system? I feel like world-class.
I mean, look, Mr. Chair, everybody knows, Canadians know that we are in the middle of a pandemic. Canadians know that there are all kinds of challenges and problems, whether it's with the airline sector, whether even, we have restrictions where people cannot visit their families. We have businesses that are suffering. We have all kinds of challenges. And our job as a government is to do our utmost to have the backs of Canadians, to look after them during this difficult time. And we are doing everything we can to be there for Canadians.
Thank you, Minister, and thank you, Mr. Bachrach. We're now going to move on over to Ms. Cusi. Ms. Cusi, you have the floor for 5 minutes.
Mr. Chair, may I just say that I'm happy to take the next couple of questions, but I hope the committee forgives me. I have to. I'm already 2 minutes late to my appointment, so I'll leave it. I'll take the next couple of questions, but I hope the committee forgives me for having to leave early.
Thank you, Minister. Ms. Cusi, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Minister, for continuing to make yourself available. Minister, for a government that has prided itself on transparency with Canadians, can you answer, please, why partners and airline sectors within these negotiations regarding this upcoming plan, which you've committed to, were required to sign non-disclosure agreements, please? Can you comment on that, please? Leaving everyone in the dark as to what we can expect and when we can expect it.
Minister.
Mr. Chair, Canadians know that negotiations will involve disclosure of financial information, disclosure and discussions about various options. And Canadians will know that I'm not able, if I say something now and then the negotiations end up taking another turn, that will end up causing misinformation for Canadians. So I think my colleague understands why I don't have the ability to talk about the machinations of the negotiations that are taking place. And I think my colleague knows why it needs to be confidential until it's completed.
Ms. Cusi.
Thank you, Chair. My colleague mentioned previously about how when the pandemic is over, or finally we hope the government is successful in their vaccination efforts, or perhaps utilizing the tools of vaccines and rapid testing that we have been encouraging the government to do for so long. Even then, when the airline sector opens again, there will have been an incredible loss of market share that we have seen over this time, and which I've mentioned in the House, and we consider to see, for example, with the implementation of the travel restrictions, whereby American carriers can still fly Canadians to sun destinations. Will this plan include a strategy for dealing with the loss of market share, which will take years for the airline sector, Canadian airline sector, to recover?
Minister.
So, Chair, let me just correct the record. No American airlines can take Canadians to the sun destination. They have to stop. If they do, then they are buying multiple tickets to get to the sun destination. There are no direct flights between Canada and sun destination. Now, having said that, the short answer to her question is yes. We are committed to working with the airline sector and making sure that they are strong and ready for a recovery post-COVID.
Excellent. And when, again, the pandemic passes as a result of the vaccines, which we genuinely hope are procured and distributed soon, which so many Canadians have been waiting for, and Canadians are finally able to go on that vacation to visit their families they haven't seen in so long, or to take some time together as families or friends when this is all over, but there will be such incredible demand and yet such a lack of supply as a result of this government's inability to support the airline sector to maintain a certain level of service. So we'll see so many Canadians who want to go on these trips, yet the price of tickets as a result of lack of supply will be sky high. Is the government willing to accept responsibility at that time for not having intervened sooner, rather than allowing airlines and airport authorities to take the hit at the time when Canadians again are willing to travel, but will have to pay so much more as a result of this government's longstanding inaction? Will the government take responsibility at that time? Minister, please.
Mr. Chair, I think that's more a statement than a question, and I disagree with her premise. But let me repeat what I said. We are committed to working with the airline sector on making sure that we have a strong and resilient airline. We're committed to working with the airline sector on a plan through the recovery, where we think some measures will still be in place, but we want to make sure that the airlines and passengers are able to travel and operate safely. So yes, our commitment is solid to the sector.
Scusi?
Thank you, Chair. And further to that, Minister, thank you. On January 29th, the Prime Minister has stated he was committed to the safe restart of the travel and tourism sector and working on the relationship with testing and quarantine. And of course, I'm from Alberta, where we had the successful YYC pilot project, which I think would have been far easier to implement at international arrivals across the country rather than going through the process of the 3-day quarantine. So I'm asking you then, Minister, what actions have you and your colleagues taken specifically for the safe restart of the travel and tourism sector relative to testing and quarantine, please?
Mr. Chair, the best way for us to recover is by defeating COVID. That is the best and most effective plan. That's why our government is focused on ensuring vaccine supplies for all Canadians who want to be vaccinated. That's why we are imposing difficult but necessary travel measures to protect against the importation of infection and the new variants. That's why we're guided by public health advice throughout this process. This is I don't personally take any joy in these difficult decisions, but they are necessary. This is what true leadership means, Mr. Chair. It means making tough decisions.
Well, leadership minister would have been implementing rapid testing and testing on arrival so that these drastic measures weren't required, Minister. But I hope certainly you will have more success than your predecessor. Thank you, Minister, and thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Alghabra, and I do appreciate, Mr. Alghabra. I know you had a 4:30, spending some more time to give the Conservatives an allowance to spend more time with you. I do also want to express my appreciation to members. I think we had a good dialogue there. And to Minister Alghabra, I have to say two, I guess, pet projects for myself that I really appreciated that you mentioned today based on some questions that you received was that of the refunds for customers, as well as the looking at the clawbacks for travel agents. There's no doubt that those are very sensitive issues, not only for us and a broader issue throughout the country, but individual jurisdictions, individual ridings. So I truly appreciate the attention you're giving to that. And we're hoping for a good outcome for both the customers with refunds as well as the travel agents with clawbacks. And we hope that discussion continues with the airlines with respect to your negotiations. So with that, once again, to all of you, thank you. And to Minister Alghabra, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you to my colleagues. Have a great afternoon.
Enjoy. Members, we're now going to continue. We do have members of the team with us, so we can continue this dialogue. And so therefore, I am going to continue on now with the Liberals. We have Mr. Rogers for 5 minutes. Mr. Rogers, you have the floor.
Thanks, Chair. First of all, let me apologize for joining late. Had some technical difficulties that had to be ironed out, and glad to be able to join. Unfortunately, I missed some of the minister's opening remarks and some of your questioning. And my questions actually were for the minister, and but I'll put them out there, and hopefully some of our witnesses can make a comment on what I'm about to ask. We all know, of course, and we don't need to repeat the significant impact of COVID on the air sector. So I've got a couple of questions pertaining to that, and I want to know from the officials if they can comment on this. We know there are a number of issues that are at play in the negotiations with the airlines: reimbursement of passengers, regional connectivity, honoring the aerospace contracts, and so forth. And can you comment on which of these issues is proving to be the most difficult to reach an agreement on?
Mr. Chair, thank you for the question. It's a very good question. As the minister said, the government is taking a series of actions. There's now very sort of active and intense discussions and negotiations with the airlines on a package. It's really impossible to comment on the details of those at this time. Unfortunately, I think they all of those factors are important. All of those factors are in discussion, and searching an agreement that both sides will support, that will address all of those factors.
Rogers.
Yeah, and recently, we've been hearing some media reports, written reports that we may be close to reaching an agreement with the airline industry and some kind of a package that will try to support all of the employees and the people that are out of work and the different organizations that are depending on us as government to get an agreement in place with the airline industry. Of course, it's a two-way partnership. So I want to ask you, how optimistic are you that we're getting close to some kind of an agreement?
Mr. Keenan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As Minister said, he's very keen to see an agreement as soon as possible, because discussions are underway and they are complex, and these are the impact on the sector has been very, very deep. It's really impossible to speculate about exactly when these agreements will conclude, the negotiations will conclude, other than to say that the negotiations are very active, and I think both sides are working as quickly as they can to conclude them.
Mr. Rogers.
Yeah, and I also want to comment relates to NAV Canada. Mr. Keenan, are you aware of that the 27 controllers in Gander who have received layoff notices represent 40% of the air traffic controllers that look after airline aircraft in the North Atlantic? And are you concerned about the safety implications of this kind of move?
Mr. Keenan.
I think, frankly, Mr. Chair, sort of transportation safety is our number one priority of all of the objectives of Transport Canada. It comes first, and we've been watching very carefully because of the devastating impact of COVID-19 on the travel sector. We've been working diligently all year to ensure that transportation remains safe in terms of accidents and safe in terms of COVID for anybody in the system. With respect to NAVCAN, I could say this: the NAVCAN, to change their level of service, NAVCAN has to carry out consultations and studies, and they are only allowed to change their level of service if Transport Canada reviews the proposed change and concurs that it doesn't sacrifice safety. I can assure you that the officials of Transport Canada will not approve any proposed level of service change from NAVCAN unless we are assured after a very thorough review that it does not impair air safety.
Mr. Rogers.
Yeah, and one final question, Chair, regarding the blue economy that the Minister of Fisheries and others announced just recently. I just wanted Mr. Keenan to probably comment on that in terms of elaborating how creating a blue economy strategy can be operationalized, and what does it mean specifically?
Mr. Keenan.
It's a great question, Mr. Chair, and the Transport Canada is working very closely with Fisheries and Oceans, as Minister Jordan is the lead on the Blue Economy Initiative, and that we focus very much in terms of issues around safety for the environment and safety for Canadians and safety for mariners in terms of ocean issues, and that the blue economy is an opportunity to sort of responsibly take into account the incredible natural wealth and environment of Canada's oceans for the benefit of Canadians. And we're committed to work very closely with fisheries and oceans in terms of ensuring that the transportation safety, the sort of environmental safety we continue to strive for excellence in that area in support of the broader blue economy. In terms of how it's going to be operationalized, Mr. Chair, I think that Minister Jordan has just begun consultations with Canadians on the blue economy, and the results of that consultation will shape the government's plans going forward to operationalize the blue economy strategy.
Thank you, Mr. Keenan. Thank you, Mr. Rogers. We're now going to move on to our third round. We have first from the Conservatives, Mr. Shipley, followed by Liberals, Mr. Biddle, followed by the Bloc, Mr. Barcelona-Val, and following that, Mr. Bachrach from the NDP. Mr. Shipley, you have the floor for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll start by directing my questions to Mr. Keenan, and if he wants to pass them off to any of his assistants, that's fine. I know this was touched on earlier by Ms. Kuzi, and actually even yourself, Chair, at the end of this last talk. It seems to be important to you too. I had the opportunity this morning to have a meeting, a very good meeting, with the Independent Travel Advisors Group. It's a group of over 1,200 members. And it was led by a local woman, Judith Coates, who they expressed some dire concerns. This is a group that is hanging on literally by their fingernails, and I don't mean that lightly. They are struggling. They've already lost well over 200 of their independent travel advisors, different retail locations. Many of these are sole providers for their families, and they're struggling. They have great concerns about clawbacks and commission recalls. I know they told me they were going to be watching today. So could we get some reassurance for these hardworking Canadians that there will be some type of a deal made, so they will not have to be having to pay back their commission recalls and clawbacks, Mr. Keenan?
Thank you, Mr. Shipley. Mr. Keenan?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And as the member indicated, that the devastating impact of COVID-19 on the travel industry writ large, the air travel industry has hit the independent travel agents hard. It's one of the many Canadians who's felt the impact, and there's been. As the minister said, the government has put in place a series of programs to help Canadians through these impacts, whether it's the CERB, wage subsidy, et cetera. The particular issue with respect to the impact of on travel agent commissions with respect to refunds is an issue that is the government has recognized as an important one, and it is an element in the discussions with the major airlines in terms of a package and a plan on a way forward.
Thank you, Mr. Keenan. Mr. Shipley?
And thank you. And hopefully there'll be a happy ending for this, because I know these people right now, they're struggling. They're losing sleep. They're having troubles meeting their bills at home as it is. And quite frankly, they just don't have the money to pay back those commissions, and it will be putting a lot of them out of business. I also have recently been talking to Miss Rowe in my riding. Miss Rowe, through tragic events, has to travel to Australia during the pandemic to deal with some ailing family members. Now, this lady is not going vacationing on the beach. She's just strictly trying to get back to Australia to look after some loved ones. And the cost for her when she returns is just not going to be able to be doable. The $2,000 for 3 days. When she goes to Australia, they do have a program in place. She actually has to quarantine for 14 days at an approved hotel, similar to our program. She only has to pay $3,000. Where is this astronomical cost of $2,000 for 3 days coming from, Mr. Keenan?
Mr. Keenan?
Thank you for the question, Mr. Chair. I can provide a general answer, but the authority on this is the Public Health Agency of Canada, because the establishment of the testing protocol, the arrival testing protocol in the 4 major airports, and the requirement to stay in an airport hotel is a program that they're currently rolling out now. The $2,000 was an initial estimate of the total cost of the process of arriving in the airport, being tested, being transported to a hotel for 3 days, pending the results of that initial arrival test. The actual cost is actually is the product of the quotes that the hotels have provided. And I actually and it includes not just the 3-day stay at the hotel, but the transportation. It includes additional security. It includes additional health protocols to reflect the fact that the people staying in the hotel are pending a COVID test that could include one of the variants of concern. So I can't. The actual cost of that is based on the quote for the whole package of services that is being provided for that process, and the $2,000 was as an initial estimate of what it would be. The actual numbers are actually coming out in the coming days, and the details can be provided by the Public Health Agency of Canada.
Thank you, Mr. Keenan. And when you say those numbers are coming out, I definitely hope they're coming out down lower, not higher. I've done a lot of traveling myself, and you got to stay in some awfully nice hotels to get anywhere near that type of number. Are you aware? Will there be? We can get back to Miss Rowe again. Will there be some?
Mr. Shipley,
Yes,
I'm
sir.
sorry, your time's up.
Oh.
And actually, I was trying to say that, but then I realized I was on mute.
So well, I didn't see the yellow hand, Chair, so I was ready to go.
Actually, I had it up, and then
I
took it down when you hit that 5-minute mark. So
sorry, I didn't see it. My apologies.
And then, of course, I started talking, and I realized I was on mute. So my apologies. But great job, guys. Now I'm going to move over to Mr. Biddle now. And I understand Mr. Biddle is going to give half his time to Miss May. So Mr. Biddle, you can start off for 2.5 minutes, and then I'll let you know when you're around that time. And then we'll go on to Miss May. Mr. Biddle, you got the floor.
Sounds good. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Looking at the minister's supplementary mandate letter, it stipulates that he will work with the Minister of Foreign Affairs to implement recommendations and lessons learned from the report of the Special Advisor for Canada's ongoing response to the Ukraine international tragedy, including commemorating the lives of the victims and supporting the families, pursuing truth and accountability from Iran, and preventing future disasters through the Safer Skies initiative. I was hoping if you could elaborate on the Safer Skies initiative and what does that seek to achieve.
Mr. Keenan.
Thank you for the question, Mr. Chair. Indeed, like the PS752 was a horrific tragedy, just like MH17 a few years before. And the purpose of the objective of Safer Skies is to try and prevent these kind of tragedies that come from civil aviation caught in conflict zones. So the strategy is first to foster information sharing, and it's an initiative where Canada is sort of taking the lead internationally. And the objective is to foster information sharing within the global community and among countries to create a better sense across all civil aviation authorities of where there are risks from conflict zones to civil aviation, to encourage civil aviation authorities around the world to require operators to have very strong risk management plans and protocols to deal with any emerging conflict that happens in any area they're operating, and quite frankly, to improve governance around this, and to have a more coordinated approach to banning civil aviation from conflict zones in situations where the country in which the conflict zone is in which there's conflict or a risk of conflict is not themselves banning flights. I would add that just in early December, the department with the previous minister led an international conference on this. I think we had over 400 participants from around the world, and we are seeing a really encouraging level of buy-in from civil aviation authorities around the world to change practices around managing civil aviation in conflict zones to avoid ever having to deal again with the kind of horrible tragedy we have seen with PS 752.
Thank you, Mr. Keenan. Thank you, Mr. Biddle. We're now going to move on to Ms. May. Ms. May, you got the floor for 2.5 minutes.
I thank my honorable colleague, the parliamentary secretary, for this amount of time. I want to just get on the record, because I won't have time to ask questions about it, that I share the same concerns as Taylor Backrack and Michael Cran about our air traffic controllers, and I don't buy the safety answers so far from NAVCAN. Just putting it on the record. But I want to talk about our ground transportation system, which has been, I think, woefully ignored in COVID, and that is that the buses, particularly the charter buses, are in crisis. They're in free fall. They do a lot of really significant work, though. Wilson's bus line on Vancouver Island, for instance, has regularly scheduled runs that get to remote First Nations communities. I'm wondering if our witness, and I don't take all the time asking the question because it's an egregious situation, what is in the works to help the charter bus coalition across this country?
Mr. Keenan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for the question. And there's been a series of impacts in terms of the bus industry for a number of years, and it actually predates COVID. Greyhound left Western Canada, and there was a tremendous amount of work done within the the Federal Provincial Territorial Council of Ministers of Transportation, in terms of looking at the issues and looking at options and looking at strategies. And the government had an initiative for a period in terms of assisting provinces which have the lead responsibility in overseeing commercial bus industry since about 1954. But the government of Canada had a temporary program a few years ago to support provinces wishing to provide support for bus routes. The province of BC took us up on that. I think they were the only one. It remains a significant issue. I think you see a number of, I would say the intercity bus impacts are significant, as well as transit, because we focus and we spend a lot of time and we're putting a lot of energy in dealing with the impact on the air sector, and it's significant and it requires a significant amount of action. Local governments also are dealing with economic impacts on their transit system, because the transit use is down. It's not down as much as air travel, but it's down significantly. So I think all governments are actually working through, and as the minister said, COVID-19 has had massive impacts on the country, and there's a lot of adjustments required in all parts of the sector. Our focus to date has been on ensuring we actually have safety for the passengers, whether they're on a plane, on a train, on a ferry, to ensure that the protocols are in place for safe passage. And in the air sector, we're working intensely on the actions that we've described already. In terms of transit, in terms of busing, that's quite frankly, Mr. Chair, a national challenge, and it's one where the lead jurisdiction is on the part of provincial and local governments, but it's a significant issue and will need to be worked through.
Thank you, Mr. Keenan, and thank you, Ms. May. We're now going to move on to the block for 2.5 minutes. Mr. Barceau-Duval, the floor is yours.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur. Thank you very much, Chair. Mr. Keenan, now that the sale of Air Transat has been approved, we've received documents, censored documents concerning a public interest. I'd like to know if there was some way of receiving the documents now that the sale has been approved, and documents concerning consequences for prices and with regard to transactions and correspondence. I believe that the Competition Bureau documents still haven't been provided, and could they be provided to the committee so that we can review them?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And as the question from the member implies, throughout the process of the review of the proposed purchase of Transat by Air Canada, Transport Canada has reviewed, has done extensive analysis and reviewed a lot of documents. A significant chunk of that information is commercially confidential information, but it's sort of is not releasable. In response to a previous request of the committee,
Merci. Je voudrais juste que vous vous engagiez.
Thank you very much. I'd just like you to send, to make a commitment to send us anything that is now available. And I think now that the sale has been approved, there are some things that we could be provided with. My second question for you, if I mean, if you can make that commitment, that would be good. And travel agents, you've talked about discussions. Are there any guarantees with regard to commissions and help for travel agents?
Oui, merci pour la question.
Yes, thank you very much for the question. I don't want to make any response. I mean, we know that there has been a real impact on travel agents, and there are discussions underway with the air companies.
Industry and representatives. I think we understand the very devastating impact that COVID-19 has had on them, and how they're caught in the middle on the refund issue, and that is an issue that is in discussions, and that is an issue that is included and taken into account in the negotiations with the large airlines on a financial assistance strategy going forward.
Thank you, Mr. Keenan, and thank you, Mr. Barcelona-Duval. We're now going to move on to the NDP. Mr. Bachrach, you got the floor for 2.5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Keenan. Mr. Keenan, on the topic of the sale of Air Transat, one of the rationale that's been provided for approving that sale was the claim that Air Transat was likely to fail. Now, I understand that the Competition Bureau has a standardized methodology for verifying this defense in the case of anti-competitive acquisitions. I'm wondering if Transport Canada applied that methodology in making its determination that the sale was appropriate.
Mr. Keenan.
Chair, it's a great question, and I think it really is a key. The question has underneath it a key factor that's at play here, and that is that the Competition Commissioner examines the transaction purely from a lens of competition, right? And so the government took their assessment into account, and that in that assessment they have a particular sort of test with respect to failing firm and a whole bunch of issues that are from a very specific and narrow lens of competition. In considering weighing all of the evidence and in reaching its decision, the government, as required under the Canadian Transportation Act, took a broader perspective, including all aspects of the public interest, and the government came to a conclusion that approving the transaction with the strict terms and conditions that went along with that approval offered the best outcome with respect to the public interest that included a range of factors from competition to impact on consumers, workers, air services, and choices of air services in the recovery from COVID. So while, in summary, Mr. Chair, the analysis of the Competition Commissioner was certainly taken into account, but the government, in reaching its decision, considered a broader range of factors.
Mr. Bachrach, quick question.
Okay, it was a fairly long answer. I think I got the gist of it, but I'm still curious because the minister has specifically cited that the risk of Air Transat failing was one of the key rationale for approving the sale. I'm wondering if Transport Canada applied the same methodology that the Competition Bureau uses to determine whether that's actually a valid argument at all.
Mr. Keenan.
Mr. Chair, in our analysis of the transaction, we considered the impact of COVID-19 was a major factor. And interestingly, when we did the initial public interest assessment, it was just an emerging point, and it was an emerging reality in the spring, and it's become and we know now that it's had a much deeper and devastating impact on the sector. So we analyzed the transaction from a broader, I would say, we certainly considered the analysis and the frameworks that the Competition Commissioner uses. We've also looked at it from a broader, I would say, strategic economic analysis perspective, looking at the impact of COVID-19, the likely duration, and the likely recovery pathways for the Canadian air sector and the global air sector, and we included all of that in our analysis and our advice, and based on that, the government concluded that the transaction was in the public interest, taking into account all of these factors.
Thank you, Mr. Keenan, and thank you, Mr. Bachrach. We're now going to move on to our next round. Actually, no, we're just ending after a third round. So we're going to go on to Mr. Soroka for 5 minutes, followed by Ms. Jasek for 5 minutes, and then we'll get into the fourth round, hopefully. Mr. Soroka, you get the floor.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair, and my questions are going to be to Mr. Keenan then. Last Friday, during the conference call on the new travel restrictions, did I hear correctly that immigrants or refugees will have to do the mandatory hotel stay, but if they cannot afford the cost, the government will pay it?
Mr. Keenan?
Mr. Chair, I apologize. I wasn't actually on that call, so I'm struggling to provide a very precise answer to that. I'm going to see if any of my colleagues know whether or not. Mr. Chair, I could offer to get back to the committee and answer to that question, but because this is something that's being administered by the Public Health Agency of Canada, I don't think we. I can tell you that the OIC that enacts this has carved out special cases for refugees and asylum seekers. So the legal authority is there to do exactly that. The operational guidance that the Public Health Agency of Canada is using in enacting that, I can't speak to authoritatively.
Thank you, Mr. Keenan.
Well, is it possible to get that information? Because I, want to make sure I heard correctly, as other might be interested in wanting to know this information, as well as there could be Canadians that don't have the funds to do this. So I'd like to know if that's information is possible.
Sure. So we'll in general, that carve out is there to cover that case, and we'll work with our colleagues from the Public Health Agency and provide that information to the committee.
Mr. Keenan, if you can apply that or forward that information onto the clerk, that would be wonderful.
We'd be happy to do so, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Soroka?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So then I guess I'm not certain if you can answer this question, because under the new travel restrictions, travelers now have to quarantine in a government-approved hotel. What criteria did the government use to determine which hotels they would receive approval? Was it a bid process, request for proposal, or some other method?
Mr. Keenan?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Great question. And in fact, the Public Health Agency of Canada did go out with a competitive bid process to hotels. There was a range of criteria. One is they had to be situated very close to one of the 4 international airports that can receive international flights. And they had to provide a range of services, obviously the room, but in addition to that, they had to be able to provide a range to meet a strict public health safety protocols, security, transportation, etc. And as a result of that bidding process, they selected the Public Health Agency selected a series of hotels, and in fact, I believe today the booking service has gone online. There's one centralized number that anybody coming to Canada has to call to book one of these certified hotels that was selected through a competitive process.
Mr. Soroka?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. With the new travel restrictions, if you have a negative test result, travelers will be required to continue to a quarantine at their home and be retested towards the end of their quarantine. In the event of a positive result, they will be redirected to the public health center designated by the federal government. How is it safer for the people that test negative that they may have come into contact with someone that has the virus instead of going straight home and self-isolate there?
Mr. Keenan?
Sorry, Mr. Chair, I apologize, but I didn't quite, I think I missed the central premise of the question. Would you mind repeating it?
Mr. Soroka?
I'll just summarize that. How is it safer for them to be in a hotel where they could come into contact with someone that does have COVID instead of going straight home and self-isolating it?
Mr. Chair, I think I understand. You mean pending while they're awaiting the
Yes.
the result. I think in several ways. The first, that for the traveler who arrives, where the swab is taken, but you don't yet have a result, you don't know if they're positive or negative. If they go home, they take whatever. For many of them, they'll actually go through the airport. They'll take another plane. They may take an Uber home. They may take a bus. And the Public Health Agency has seen that the few people who do come in who are positive have passed on the virus in the process of going home. In contrast, with this new protocol, there's a very strict system of managing, from a public health perspective, the transportation to the nearby hotel. And the hotel is adhering to very strict public health protocols. So the risk of if they are positive, the risk of transmitting while they're moving to the airport hotel is much less than if they're allowed to continue their onward journey to their home to self-isolate. So in essence, that potential for transmission has been removed as a result of this measure.
Mr. Soroka, you got time for one quick question.
Well, with the new travel restrictions, then was the airlines ever consulted with them not being able to go to sun destinations until end of April?
Mr. Keenan?
Mr. Chair, I can say that the airlines were not just consulted, but they actually agreed. And so the airlines, the four major Canadian airlines that travel to the Caribbean and Mexico, all voluntarily agreed to immediate on the Prime Minister announced on, I think, Friday, January 29th, that they had voluntarily agreed to cease all of their travel to all Caribbean destinations in Mexico effective January 31st. And the Prime Minister thanked them for their leadership and recognized their leadership in contributing to reducing the threat of the importation of COVID and these new variants of concern, and committed to continue to work with that the government would continue to work with the industry through these negotiations, and also in developing working together and developing a plan for the eventual safe restart of air travel.
Thank you, Mr. Keenan. Thank you, Mr. Soroka. We're now going to move on for 5 minutes for Miss Jacek. Ms. Jacek, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to the witnesses for being with us this afternoon. I'm not sure which of your or who on your team is most appropriate to answer this question, but I was particularly struck by an item in the minister's supplementary mandate letter. And the direction is for the minister to work with the Minister of Innovation, Science and Industry, the Minister of Environment and Climate Change, and the Minister of Natural Resources, and with the support of the Special Representative for the Prairies, to implement the Net Zero Accelerator Fund in continuing to support our manufacturing, transportation, natural resource, and energy sectors as they work to transform to meet a net zero future, creating good paying and long-lasting jobs. So a lot of words. Could you make this a little more concrete? Perhaps give us an example of what type of business might apply to this fund, what it would look like, and what sort of role Transport Canada is going to take in this initiative.
Mr. Keenan?
Sure, Mr. Chair, great question. If I can, I'll refer that question to my colleague Lawrence Hansen, the Senior Assistant Deputy Minister for Strategic Policy, who's overseeing our work on the enhanced climate plan. Lawrence?
Mr. Hansen?
Sure. Thank you very much, Chair. So the issue is that the fund is ultimately looking to drive technological innovation in key sources of carbon emitting sectors. And as members may know, about 25% of all our emissions comes from transportation. And Transport Canada has significant expertise, both in an economic and in a regulatory sense in the automotive sector, which is one of the key elements of the Net Zero Accelerator. So we'll be working very closely with those departments on the net zero, just as we have been on other related issues in the auto sector, such as zero emission vehicles.
So thank you, Mr. Hansen. And to follow up, and I think it fits fairly well, we've started to hear about light utility vehicles becoming net zero. And I'm very much struck by the need for this in my riding and my neighborhood. It seems like every young fellow, 20 to 30, seems to want to drive one of these vehicles. They're really so common. So it seems like a great initiative. Could you tell us a little bit about which automotive companies are moving in this direction and whether you think that we'll be on target for 2040?
Mr. Chair, great question. And I think we've seen the same trend as the member. For example, you can see almost every week or every month, the auto companies are bringing out new commitments in terms of moving their lines of light duty vehicles, including some sport utility vehicles, into zero emission propulsion systems. The zero emission vehicle incentive program gets new applications for models on a regular basis to be registered for eligibility, and just as a reminder to members that program has a very strict price limit in terms of vehicles to be eligible have to have a base model that's under $45,000. And so I think we are seeing that shift in light duty vehicles. We're seeing that the shift in sport utility vehicles, and we're anticipating a future shift in heavy duty vehicles as the economics of the technology advances and the economics improves for battery technology and zero emission vehicles. And so we do think that the 2040 target is very ambitious, 100% new sales, and it's going to take a lot of work to get there, but we're seeing the progress, and we're seeing the sort of exponential growth of zero emission vehicles at this time.
Ms. Jacek?
How many Canadians have actually taken advantage of the net zero vehicle incentive program?
We're very happy to have actually sent incentive payments to 70,000 Canadians so far.
And in a dollar value, how much actually was that subsidy?
That's a great question. I'm going to turn that over to the Senior Assistant Deputy Minister, Anu Marasetti of Programs, who she and her folks run the program. And Anu, could you tell us how much we've sent out so far?
Ms. Marasetti?
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Up to this point, the funding was for about close to $300 million, and we've almost exhausted all the money. So it's close to 290 and odd some dollars that we've already given out in terms of incentives. And now in December 2020, the Prime Minister announced a further $282 million for the program, which makes the program available to continue providing incentives to future users till 2022.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Marasetti. Thank you, Ms. Jacek, Mr. Keenan, and Mr. Hansen. Great round of questions. We're now going to move on to our next round. I'm going to try and get this last round in before time expires. We have first up Ms. Cusi for 5 minutes, followed by Mr. Biddle for 5 minutes, 2.5 minutes for Mr. Barcelona-Bell, and Mr. Backrack for 2.5 minutes. So with that, Ms. Cusi, you have the floor. Ms. Cusi?
I'm happy to take her time, Mr. Chair.
Ms. Cusi? I think she might be having some audio problems. She's trying to reconnect.
I'm sure I know what she was going to say, so maybe I can channel Stephanie. And
Stephanie, how you making out there? Okay, she's having some challenges, so I'm going to move on to another CPC member, Mr. Cram, Soroka, or Shipley.
Oh, no, pardon me, Chair. Here I am. My apologies. Yeah, no, good stuff.
You're all set. Good stuff.
Oh, good. Well, thank you so much, Chair, for having me back, and thank you very much to our witnesses for being here. So my questions go back again to the sector-specific supports for the aviation sector. How long has Transport Canada been working on these sector-specific supports for the aviation sector? As I mentioned in the round with the minister, on March 12th, the previous minister stated that the government was looking into it, and then finally on November 8th, the government announced that they were starting negotiations. But what are your recollections in terms of the timeline for sector-specific support, please?
Mr. Keenan, before I go to Mr. Keenan, I'm going to ask Steph if you can just pop your mic up a bit.
There we go.
Thank you. Mr. Keenan, floor is yours.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair. In response to the members' questions, I think the department, Transport Canada, has been working on different aspects of support to the sector from March. I'll give you an example. There was a lot of regulatory changes that we put in place to help the sector cope with the tremendous dislocation. We developed the remote air services program to show our services to the most remote and isolated 140 communities in Canada. The rent relief for airports, there was a round of it done in the spring. There was a package of about $1 billion in measures for airports in the fall economic statement. So there's been a series of actions that have been carried out, and there's been sort of ongoing work throughout the entire period.
Scusi?
Thank you, Chair. Can you comment on what it is like to implement policy at such a rapid pace, and sort of what direction you've received from the government and what direction would have been more helpful? I think, for example, the December 31st announcement of the government that they were going to be implementing the PCR testing within 7 days, and then, of course, following this the sort of the fear and alarm within the airline sector and airport authorities again that the 3-day quarantine was going to be implemented. What was described as immediately, but then essentially didn't end up being more than 3 weeks later. I was told by industry sources it would take 2 weeks, but it's actually ended up taking closer to 3. Can you sort of describe what it has been like to respond to such quick turnaround with what seems to be very little, no notice and very little direction, and what could have helped in terms of being able to implement just with more precision and more clarity? I also was on the like my colleague, Mr. Shipley had mentioned, I was also on the technical briefing on Friday, and it was actually very it was concerning because there seemed to be so little information prior to the orders in council being released, and I should also add, what was also alarming was that the majority of questions were from members of the governing party, and it is astounding to me that there wasn't even an internal caucus briefing, that they would have to come on this call with their own questions. And then, as I also saw throughout the pandemic, at my time for Shadow Minister for Families, Children and Social Development for HUMA, where we looked at CERB, where it sort of seemed to delineate into more specific permutations of the programs, we saw the same thing, where it sort of started off with broad questions about what about students, what about workers, and then ended up being like, a senior from wherever with their cat, how are they going to get back? So if you can perhaps just sort of provide some information as to what has it been like to turn around these policies with such incredible expectation for the safety of Canadians so quickly, and what direction do you think you could have received from the government to perhaps make it easier to adapt and to implement? Anyone? Thank you.
Mr. Keenan.
Mr. Chair, it's a great question because, and it's one of kind of broader perspective because just agree with the premise of the question. The impact of COVID-19 has been unprecedented in like how devastating it's been for Canada, impact on Canadians around the world, and what it's required in terms of government decision making. I've been a public servant for over 30 years, and I have never seen anything like this, where essentially over the whole year, the government, the federal government, all of the provincial governments and governments around the world have had to make what would have been before COVID unimaginably aggressive, quick and aggressive decisions to protect public health. And so it's been going on all year. And so it's hard to find words to describe it. I think to come back to the point in terms of the question about the most recent changes is a great example. Because that is simply one chapter in a very long book of difficult surprises and new developments that have to be responded to immediately. And I remember the news when the news broke about the UK variant of concern. It was just a couple of days before Christmas, and it shocked the world. And the implications of it have been destabilizing for the global fight against COVID. And within hours, there was high-level meetings and discussions and analysis and looking at options. And I can't remember. And within a number of hours, the government, we took action, and we implemented, quite frankly, an unprecedented measure, which is that we used our assessment done sort of over the last 24 hours, sort of during the day and over the night, from the Chief Public Health Officer of Canada. And we combined the authorities of the Quarantine Act and the Aeronautics Act to actually ban all direct flights from the UK. And that's something we've never done before for a public health reason, and we did it very quickly based on analysis that was done in a very compressed period to deal with that variant of concern. And then we followed that up on December 31st with the announcement that we had already had strict travel measures, the 14-day quarantine, some of the toughest international travel measures in the world, and we immediately added, with essentially 1 week's notice, and a requirement for pre-board COVID testing for all international arrivals into Canada. And we worked with the industry and we consulted with them, but on a very, very compressed timeline. And I would say that I think we've been we knew that it would be challenging for the industry to implement this on such an accelerated schedule, but we also felt it was imperative to do so in terms of protecting public health. And we are very appreciative and recognize that the industry did a great job. So there was a very rapid phase in of that. We've seen very quickly we've moved to a very high level of compliance, and that's become a significant new measure to protect public health. And in regular, if you call it sort of public health peacetime, it would be unimaginable that we would put in place a measure so quickly and impose it and so dramatically change the requirements of what airlines do to screen passengers in 57 countries that have direct flights to Canada. But it was something that became not just imaginable, but it's something that happened in COVID. And we've seen that in terms of the successive steps of measures that have been taken since the discovery of the UK variant of concern. And then there was a Brazilian variant of concern and South African variant of concern. And so you've seen a successive ramp up of some very tough measures where people arriving in Canada by air in Canada actually end up with 3 COVID tests before they're free and clear of quarantine, which is pretty stringent stuff. But it's pretty stringent stuff to try to keep out the devastating effect of these variants of concern.
Thank you, Mr. Keenan, and thank you, Ms. Kusi.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Mr. Keenan.
We're going to move on to Mr. Biddle. Mr. Biddle, you got the floor for 5 minutes. You're on mute there, Chris.
Yeah, I'll figure this out eventually. We're almost a year in. We'll figure this out. I was wondering if you could provide an update on the port's modernization review, and more specifically, the aim to update governance structures that promote investment in Canadian ports.
Sure, I would be happy to, Mr. Chair. I think for that, if I can, I'm going to turn to my colleague, Mr. Hansen, and again, it's one of the things that he's leading on here at Transport Canada.
Mr. Hansen.
Thanks very much, Chair, and thanks to the member for his question. So as part of the review, we did a significant amount of analysis of different kinds in terms, obviously, speaking to stakeholders across the country, the Canada Port Authorities themselves, a lot of internal analysis. We did provide what we heard report in October that kind of gives a sense of some of the key messages. We are in the process of finalizing our advice to the minister on that. This is a system that's been in place, for a lengthy period of time and has huge implications for our trade and competitiveness. So we really do want to make sure we get this right, and we do it in a way that, the existing system certainly works very well as it stands, but there's room for improvement, and we're just finalizing our advice to think of the best ways to do that.
Thank you so much. And I guess if I can ask a broader question as to the impacts of COVID on Transport Canada itself, priorities, mental health of public servants and how they're doing their work. And I'm wondering if you could speak to that.
Sure, be happy to. And Mr. Chair, thank you for the question. COVID-19's had a devastating impact on so many Canadians. On everybody's been affected, and even those whose livelihood has not been affected. And I think that everybody at Transport Canada is in that category. It's still been a very challenging. Experience. We have. I just, if you permit me, Mr. Chair, a shout out and an appreciation to the over 6,000 people who work at Transport Canada, because like everybody else over the weekend in mid-March, we sent everybody home. And we on a Monday morning, we started up with the 6,000 people, virtually like 98% of them working remotely. And at the same time, we had to respond to this unprecedented crisis and take an enormous amount of action in terms of we've probably done about 3 years worth of regulatory changes in the last year just to ensure that the transportation system is safe for Canadians in responding to the economic crisis. And the folks at Transport Canada came through with a real sense of public service. Like people everywhere in Canada, I think they and so many other Canadians have faced the same reality of a higher work burden, the dislocation of working at home, and for many of them, taking care of kids who would otherwise be in school or daycare who can't. And folks pulled through. We spent a lot of time focusing on mental health and providing mental health support, a lot of time polling our employees to see how they're doing. And they've been amazingly resilient. It hasn't been easy. There's been a lot of challenges, but I think that's the story that, quite frankly, all Canadians are experiencing. And I think the one thing that people here have is a sense of like they hope and they believe that they're helping to make a difference. Like every other employer, we've had to find a way of doing things differently. So we're now doing a lot of things virtually, and we're living on Zoom and Teams, and finding a way to get it done. And we believe that we're still able, through different strategies. Sometimes we do things in person, but sometimes, like we've used GoPros and high res cameras to remotely inspect ships because it wasn't safe to put inspectors on. And we're continuing the work and hanging in there, again, like all other Canadians are trying to hang in there through a very difficult experience. But thank you for the question.
One more quick one, Mr. Biddle.
Sure. Maybe I'll just ask for an expansion on your answer with respect to inspections and the important work that TC does on the safety side of things. You mentioned the GoPro cameras, but you could expand on that and what Transport Canada is doing in that with inspections.
Mr. Keenan.
Mr. Chair, I'd be happy to. And I think I'll turn that over to Kevin Brousseau, the Senior Assistant Deputy Minister for Safety and Security, to elaborate on that.
Mr. Brousseau.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to the member for the question. very proud in my role as the senior ADM of safety and security, joined by a few thousand employees, in terms of the ability to be able to pivot and provide and ensure safety for Canadians, safety and security for Canadians across the transportation modes, whether that's as the example that Deputy Minister Keenan provided with respect to ships, on the rail side, transportation of dangerous goods, where we're doing work differently, yet at the same time ensuring that the highest risk items, the highest risk areas, the priority areas are still being attended to. And it's an evolution. It's been an evolution for the past year. I think we've learned lessons about how we can actually function more efficiently, deliver on our key services probably in a more effective way. But it has, and you raised the question before. There has been a mental health poll, no doubt. Folks are tired, but still very committed to the cause. Committed, believe in their hearts that delivering on our safety and security mandate is primary. And really, frankly, speaking for them, very proud of their work. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brousseau. Thank you, Mr. Biddle. We're now going to move on to Mr. Barceau-Duval for 2.5 minutes.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Première question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First question for Mr. Keenan. If people test positive as a positive result when tested at the time of quarantine, are they transferred to some dwelling centers? Do you know how much it costs to have somebody on board and take people per day, for instance? Thank you for the question, Mr. Chairman. I do not have the exact figures regarding the cost of putting up people in the quarantine facilities.
The Public Health Agency of Canada has a network of designated quarantine facilities across the country.
Merci. Je comprends que vous n'avez pas les données, donc ça serait...
Yes, I understand. I do not have the data. Could you please provide the data to the committee? And also, my next question to you is that NAV Canada, did they communicate with you? Did they let you know that they intended to reduce the services? And could you tell us in which areas they are planning to cut services?
Monsieur le Président, NAVCAN has indicated that they have an intention of carrying out a series of studies on changing the level of service in a series of control towers and flight service stations. They have not yet filed with Transport Canada any formal proposals to change the level of service. They've indicated that work is underway.
Ma dernière question pour vous, est-ce que...
My last question for you, Mr. Keenan, is do your officials, have you had contacts with officials of another purchaser than Air Canada? Have you had contact with other purchasers than representatives of Air Canada?
As of reviewing the transaction and of analyzing all of the information available to support the government's decision on Transat, Transport Canada has carefully assessed all information received, including any information provided by any party that was had any interest.
Merci, je comprends que la réponse est non.
Thank you. I understand that the answer is no.
We're now going to move on to Mr. Bachrach. Mr. Bachrach, final speaker. You have the floor for 2.5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Keenan, with regard to the recently announced travel restrictions, Canadians have identified a number of compassionate cases that are not covered under the announced exemptions. For instance, specifically, they're wondering about travel companions of a minor or travel companions of a person with a disability who are traveling across the border in order to access essential medical care. Will the travel companion be able to access the same exemptions as the minors or the people with disabilities?
Mr. Keenan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As the member indicated, in developing the order with respect to the requirement for the 3-day stay during the and the testing requirements, the Public Health Agency of Canada has provided some additional carve-outs. For example, people traveling for essential medical care. And it has indicated that it would look at specific cases and situations like that. So I believe that is likely being looked at by the Public Health Agency of Canada. I can't authoritatively tell you exactly where they're at on that, but again, I think as with a number of other questions that relate to the Public Health Agency of Canada's sort of exact provisions and operating guidelines, we'll consult with them. And we'll make sure to bring that information to the clerk of the committee.
Mr. Bachrach.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Okay, my last question is around the hotel quarantine as well. And specifically, I'm wondering about people who may be positive but not caught by that test on arrival. So the McMaster-Pearson study found a total of 1% of inbound passengers ended up testing positive. 0.7% tested positive on arrival, and another 0.3% after 7 days. Now, the hotel quarantine under the current restrictions only lasts for 3 days. I'm wondering about those 0.3%. That's fully a third of the total positive cases that wouldn't be caught by the first test. And is there a risk of transmission if those people are able to leave after 3 days and travel on to their home destination?
Mr. Keenan.
Mr. Chair, the member raises a really good question, and in fact, I think that that exact risk that's identified by the minister really informed the policy that's developed. In two ways. The first is that the test the members referring to, the post-arrival test. And the core issue here is that it's possible for the virus to the first few days that the virus is in a body, it won't show up in even a PCR test. It takes a few days and then it starts to show up. But that post-arrival test, then that the person has to stay in the airport hotel until it clears negative. It's not the first test; it's the second test. And so they've already had a test 72 hours up to 72 hours before they actually departed. So that test is happening probably, depending on the exact details, it's probably happening 2, 3, or 4 days after the first test. So they're not clear of one test, they're clear of 2 tests. And so the risk of them actually having COVID is much less than the statistics implied by the McMaster study. And so that, and then they're still under an obligation to follow strict protocols for travel, and they're still under an obligation to follow strict quarantines in their homes. And then there's a third test at the end of that. And so I think the building a system with 3 tests in it, I think is geared to actually eliminate to the greatest extent possible the risk of anybody slipping through, because at any one point in time, you may have you may show a negative test even though you do have COVID. After those 3 tests, I think there's the high level of certainty the person is clear of COVID and safe to move about in their daily lives.
Thank you, Mr. Keenan, and Mr. Bachrach. Thank you as well. And to all members, I want to thank you for your candidness today in the questioning, and to the witnesses, Mr. Keenan, Mr. Hansen, Ms. Marasetti, as well as Mr. Brosseau. Mr. Brosseau, I'm glad you got that one question. So you're able to respond, and thank you for Chris for getting him included. Appreciate that. But to all the witnesses, and I want to thank you as well as the Minister, Minister Alghabra, for being very candid in your answers and really getting a lot of information out to the committee, which I'm sure the analysts have absorbed and will be included within the final report. So to all members, thank you for your time today, as well as the witnesses, and we'll see you on Tuesday at our next meeting. Have a great evening.
Thank you very much.